Let's get loud!
How's everybody doing today?
Good, good, good. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We are going to be louding up the gap today. Mind the gap. That's what you said in our very first episode. Mind the gap. Do you want to talk a little bit about where did you come from with that? Mind the gap?
I was after Hurricane Ivan in 2004. We got moved to work in the UK in London, and every time when we're trying to get on the tube, there's an announcer that always used to say, "Mind the gap, mind the gap," and it just caught my mind that there's a lot of gaps in a lot of things, and when we did that presentation the other day, we said mind the gap between what you look like when you met your top dog and what you look like now. But when you reflect, there's so many other areas that one can or one needs to be on the lookout for the gap. I think Miss has something to say about that.
Yeah.
All right, the Miss, let's hear what you have to say about the gap.
Well, the gap applies to different areas of our lives.
Absolutely.
I think career-wise, you have to mind the gap. Like you have to keep progressing, studying different courses to upgrade yourself because the market is so competitive now. So if you remain the same person, you might not get to where you want to be.
Very true.
And sometimes if your partner is upgrading themselves, you're going to be left out.
So we start here.
Yeah, because once they're sitting watching Netflix, they're studying something else. So you might need to catch up. Not that you have to be at par, but at least synchronize.
Synchronize, I like that. I like synchronized dancing. And when I watch synchronized dancing, everybody moves at the same rhythm, the same pace. And we find that we come into relationships and we're at the same level. So we started off at the bottom. And then I find my why. So I'm now ready to pursue who I am, my purpose. And I start off and I say, Greg, this is really what speaks to me, and I'm going to make sure I get qualified. And he's like, okay, honey, have fun. And he says here, we're now on a seesaw. I'm up here, he's down here. How is that going to help our relationship?
Yeah, it has to be a progression in any relationship. And when you look at career, when you look at things in the relationship. So for example, if you used to do something sweet for the wife, you brought her home a single rose every day while you're courting. When you're married, it may not be every day, it may be every week, but you still have to maintain that thing that brought you guys together. Otherwise, you're slowly gonna drift apart. And it comes with communication. When you're courting, you spend hours on the phone. The phone is hot. You have to put the phone down, and you pick up the second phone,
or the iPad,
or
the PC,
whatever it was. And that's whatever you did to get where you are in your relationship. It's vital that you keep on doing it to maintain that, so there's no gap.
There's no gap, indeed.
Mind that expectation gap, it's critical. You see, because you set a precedent, like you say, you rightly said, you set a precedent. And you also develop your habits as you get along as a couple. There's things that you do as a routine, and your wife knows or your partner knows what you're gonna do. And then if you change that, there's gonna be a gap, and you have to mind that. And sometimes it comes with having children. It comes with a lot of things. When you have kids, there's going to be gaps in the amount of attention you give each other. Yeah, it's critical to mind that gap, because I have 2 boys, so we are 3 males fighting for the attention of the queen bee.
Woo! Right.
I can't fight. Some of these guys, they fight rough. They are not fair. They don't
play by the rules, right?
They don't play by the rules for sure. They don't play by the rules, so you lose the game.
They start crying, and you have to like, all right.
Yeah, and as a mother and a wife or a partner in a relationship, you gotta mind that gap to avoid overemphasizing your attention. I'm not saying kids are not important; they are important. But make time for your top dog, because once that gap is there, sometimes these dogs don't say it, but the jealousy is there. It's inherent. I met you first, right? I met you first, but you love these guys more. I know that because they are your own flesh and blood. But mind how you handle me in that whole area. I used to find it easy when we had one child. Now we have 2 guys that are as demanding as me. They're exact replica of me. So I'm in trouble in terms of trying to get attention from the team.
You created them. You created them, right? So
yes.
Sometimes we are not even prepared for when that third person comes into the relationship, aka a child. And we find that the mother is pulled away and the top dog is just left out to fend for himself.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's when the gap can become so wide.
Yeah. And even the top dog himself, he has to also mind the gap. Because once the kids start going and you're playing with the kids, you might not give her the necessary or enough attention. It's very difficult.
And you know, Fortune, you mentioned balance, and that is so critical. And the other thing go ahead.
I said that balance is critical.
Yes. And you know, the thing that bolsters that balance is constant communication.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. You mentioned earlier in the first episode, or is it the second episode, about code words.
Pass me the sugar.
Yes, you remember that one? So it's important that you maintain that spice in the communication and understanding that, okay, what we're going to do this Friday, we're going to bathe them early and we're going to put them to sleep early. Actually, I'm going to take them to the park as soon as I get home. I'm going to wear them out. That way you guys plan for your time.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That is how you maintain healthy relationship between the top dog and the queen bee.
And the kiddos.
And the little bees.
Yes,
and,
the little
dogs.
bees and doggies. but there's something that I think helps in the gap as well. When kids want to sleep in your bed, how do you mind the gap as to how long they can sleep in your bed? Come between, widen the gap.
That
Mitchelle?
is a very, very, very difficult question. Having had 2 kids, the first guy didn't mind sleeping in the crib. His second puppy is difficult. He's not gonna have his time in there. So there's always all these little tricks and plans that you come up with to get him in there, you know. But the most important thing, I think, to manage around the kids is to understand, 1, they are all different. They're not gonna be the same. 2, they are important. 3, you just have to plan around them because they are not going anywhere.
Until they're probably 18.
Not anytime soon, anyway.
Yeah. And as they grow, they catch up with whatever trick you come up with. So sometimes you babysit kids for your friends to give them time to be alone. You can babysit your own kids to get your time alone. So develop a network of friends where you have a routine or a circle of, okay, this week you guys are gonna have a date night. These guys are gonna look after the kids and stuff like that. Make time for yourselves and make time for the puppies too, because they need your attention.
Yeah,
they need. Say, take them to the park to wear them off. Then you make time for yourself. It's important.
I like the mention of a circle of friends, because we cannot raise our kids by ourselves. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. Remember that one? And we tend to find that we're in places where the village that we grew up in is not around us. So we have to create a new village to help. We have to create that new village. But
and you have to mind the gap between your village of back and your village of now that you're creating. The gap has to be very small.
I was just going to touch on that. So you got ahead on me on that one. You really did. But speaking of the gap in communication, there is something I want to pinpoint when it comes to that. Sometimes Greg will ask me a question and I'll go, and he says to me, what is that? Is that yes or no? And I say, you know what? You live in America too long. Means yes. Means no. And sometimes he still doesn't get it, right? So we have to be mindful of the jargons. If that's a good word, you know. And slang. The slangs. And sometimes some people use some words you have to wonder, okay, phone, Google, what does that mean? So the communication, because we're trying to, I don't know, impress maybe. And then we leave that person wondering, okay, what did you just say? And then I say yes, and it wasn't a yes, it was a no. So we have to be mindful too. Michelle, what do you think about that?
Absolutely.
I totally agree with you guys, but after being together for so long, at some point you know what it means to be honest without any explanations given.
So it takes time, right? So you are way ahead of us.
Yeah.
Where are you? So we're still
time makes you one, right? You know, when you're joined as one, time will really make you one because you can finish each other's sentences. You understand the meaning of an or an there's a big difference. You get used to that, but don't assume that the gap is still intact. You gotta have to rehash and cross-check to make sure that this is exactly where you're on the same wavelength, because it might get a bit noisy, you know.
Noisy. When you say noisy, exactly what do you mean? You want to expand on that just a little bit more?
Okay, I mean, like sometimes you can have a bad day at work, right? And you're talking, your mind is not there, and then somebody reads a certain way, which you are not exactly there. So it's important to observe the gap between the mood of that person to the mood that they are usually used to seeing. It's critical that you look at it closely. I mean, constant observation of the gap. Imagine you're trying to jump onto this train. You always have to look at the gap before you jump on, right? And watching the gap is constant. That's why even when you look at that tube station, they are always constantly announcing that people need to mind the gap. So in your life, every day, you need to always mind that gap. Always, it's important.
Thank you for that. That was very insightful. Now, another area that we find ourselves minding or maybe not minding the gap so well is an area that Michelle touched on last week when she said that she hasn't shopped in 2 years. Pre-baby, post-baby. Now, if you haven't shopped in 2 years and you're still looking so fabulous, it means that the gap wasn't that big. Am I correct, Michelle?
It was, and it's still work in progress, but I just made a commitment that I wasn't intending to buy the next size. So I planned around it because I wasn't prepared to buy the next size, but possibly go a size down to where I was pre-pregnant.
I love that. I really do, because a lot of people size up instead of saying, okay, let me take some measurements to remain at this size or size down. I remember for myself, speaking from my own perspective, when I came to the Cayman Islands maybe 20 plus years ago, I was literally a size 2, I think it was. A size 2. My waistline was about 24 inches when I came here. And I remember not even 2 years into marriage, I didn't realize that my gap, my first marriage, Greg kindly reminded me of that. That gap had widened to size 10. I didn't realize it. I really didn't. Imagine 2 to 10 in less than 3 years. That's a lot.
Yeah.
And it took my cousin who came to visit from Jamaica, and she took her boyfriend to introduce me, and he whispered something that he didn't think I heard. He said, "Is she pregnant?" And when I heard that, I'm like, something needs to be done. And that's when I went back to my pre-Jamaica lifestyle, and I started living that, eating my way back to me. So how are you managing yours? How are you taking charge to ensure that you go back to the pre? What are some of the steps that you're doing, Mitchelle?
So what I do is I watch what I eat, because we are what we eat. Sometimes
we are what you eat. Yes.
Yeah. So we eat too much when we don't really need to. Sometimes we are thirsty, but we don't drink water, but eat food. So all I do is I do eat things that I like, but in moderation. That's all I do. When I get a chance, I go and walk.
You exercise a lot.
I exercise a lot. Sometimes I just do it downstairs with the kids on YouTube. Thank God for YouTube. So you get things that you like. So I can work on my abs. I can do all sorts of things, Zumba and stuff like that.
Nice.
You know what the biggest part is what we put inside our bodies.
Yes.
I like that, Michelle. And one thing I heard that I really like is the fact that you say you do things that you like. So personally for me, I would never go to a gym. I don't like a gym. And kudos to all those who go to the gym. But me, give me a hula hoop. I'm going to work on that waistline. I'm going to hoop that hula hoop until that waistline goes, right? I'm going to skip because I like jumping ropes. And now I've taken up swimming. Right? And I've taken up riding, and I like that, right? So now Greg has me. Don't get Greg for a coach, right? He makes you do 6 hills, and then he makes it look so easy. One day I had to say, Greg, hold on, your back wet? Because it's quite clear I'm the one doing the work. You're not doing anything. But it's good to do what you like when it comes to keeping your body fit. And when you said we are what we eat.
Yeah.
How many times we eat and then we expand, the gap goes like this. And then all of a sudden we want the gap to come back. But it took years.
Yeah.
Took years. So we have to just time, You know,
one of the things when it comes to exercising, I like the diversity of what you do, Michelle. In that you say, you know what, I find something on YouTube and I do it. We do the same thing. We swim twice a week. And for those times we will Google, you know, water aerobics, and we'll do a couple of minutes, maybe 30 minutes of water aerobics and 30 minutes of swimming back and forth. Ingrid is strengthening her swimming skills, so we work on that as well. Similar to bike riding, I used to be an avid bike rider. Now Ingrid is not there yet, but what I do is I challenge Ingrid every time we go out, so that we add a little more to it, You know, it's like exercise. If you do the same exercise every day, you're gonna reach a certain point
and you plateau,
and you're not gonna do anything else. So you have to mix it up, you have to change it up, and we alternate and do that. But again, it comes down to communication. You know, we have to say thank you for COVID for one thing. Pre-COVID,
absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely.
Pre-COVID, I went out and I'll, you know, do my couple miles on the road. Ingrid would do her hula hoop and jumping at the house. Of course, during COVID, the minute they say, okay, you can do your daily exercise at 6 a.m. It was 6 first. So remember, they started lifting the curfew earlier and earlier. So we started, when they started lifting the curfew at 5, by 5 o'clock we're ready and we head down and we go all the way down to Kamana Bay and back. Now that the curfew is obsolete, we ride. So we ride, I mean, and one of the things about where we are now living, you know, there's so many places to explore, especially early in the morning when the traffic is not so high. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So take advantage of your surroundings. Communicate with your queen bee or top dog and get a routine going. That's how you mind the gap.
I mean, I want to add something to that. See, normally there's a lot of things that people can't do as couples because it's a source of pain, right? Exercise is painful. And when you exercise as a couple, mind that gap of how you push your next partner.
Oh, absolutely.
Something that can actually push you further apart. How you come together and be closer depends on how you handle that gap in your pain thresholds. You know, I'm a cyclist. I'm a keen cyclist like you, and she took up cycling. She says, "Oh, I want to do cycling." And before anything, I had bought a bike, helmet, cleats, everything. Let's go, right? And I was putting her under a lot of pressure. Okay, keep up. You know, we are going out as a group. You gotta be up there, and it destroyed her love for that. But for me, I wanted her to keep up with me instead of trying to keep with her.
Wow.
And bring her in bits and pieces. I'm telling you the truth, because after that she will be like, you know what? I don't like cycling, right? But one thing I learned from that is that if you don't mind the gap of how you communicate what you like and what you don't like, you can easily destroy your own relationship, because it was a pain point in our relationship in that I want to wake up at 4 a.m. to go out there and be with our friends. We go and do a group ride. We are a bunch of, you know, very good friends. We like to do things as couples, you know, but at that point, we realized that some of us liked riding bicycles and going to East End and back, and you feel you achieved something. But amongst us, there were some that would not do that. They didn't like it. They preferred something else. It took a bit of time and adjustment for all of us to say, you know what, there's 4 of us that like to go cycling. Let's just go. These guys that don't want to go cycling, let's just leave them. But it took one person to say, hey guys, this gap needs to be minded. So it's important when you exercise as a couple to find areas which you have in common, and then do it to levels that leaves both of you happy and enjoying doing something together. Yes. Because if you go out there military style and you're pushing your wife, it's a problem. I do that. If I exercise with my wife, I push. If I exercise with my son, I push. But I learned a lot from her, because she would mind that gap by telling me like it is that, okay, I don't like this, and I prefer to do A, B, C, D.
Right.
And sometimes we find that it's not that she doesn't like it. She doesn't like the pressure that comes with it. Because I remember when we started cycling, right? And Greg was going over the hill, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this. And then I just do 2 and I'm bust. And then I have to get off the bike and I have to push the bike over the hill. But the good thing about my coach, right? The good thing about my coach, he always comes back and meets me, and then he goes with me over the hill. Even when I'm pushing and he's just riding slowly, you know, looking stylish and making it look easy. And then I would just look at him and say, you know, honey, one day I'm going to do that. But not today. Not today.
Tell you, I have 2 best friends. One is very good at that. One is not so patient, and he will push everybody, but he is very good with her and not his wife. So he'll be like, yeah, you can do this, you can do this. But you learn, you observe your friend, what he's doing right, and you adapt that, and you can see this guy has taught you how to close this gap.
You know, growing up in the States, where when I learned to drive in Jamaica, I learned how to drive a stick shift. In the States, everybody drives on automatic. And the one rule that I learned very early is that never teach your significant other how to drive a stick shift or how to operate a vehicle. That is something that you pawn off to your best friend.
Well, how to ride a bike. Anything
you farm that out.
Trust me, anything that requires patience or care, leave it to someone else.
Well, it's not so much patience and caring, a Fortune. anything that requires instructions.
There you go. That's exactly what I meant.
Because, you know, when you say, okay, now it's time to sink the clutch and change the gear, I'm sinking the clutch. But that's not, why are you yelling at me? I just asked you to sink the clutch. And it goes downhill fast. So again, as top dogs and queen bees, we have to learn the differences between our communication, the difference between how we process information. And even now, Ingrid can ride over every single hill that we encounter on our ride each morning. Now, the goal is to actually get her to do it a little quicker. So we're working on that. Yeah, and she's getting there. But to your point, you have to realize where you are, where your queen bee is, and kind of work with her to get there, or work with him to get there. Because sometimes it's the other way around. But minding the gap, it comes, and again, it comes back to where we started, communication.
It's always about communication. It's always about, you see, another area where you have to mind the gap is your job, right?
Yes.
That's an area where you can have gaps. You gotta mind the gap of what you want from a job and what you're getting from it. Because sometimes people go into a job for the money, and they're not exactly happy, and there's a gap between the satisfaction that they get on payday and the satisfaction that they get for the remainder of the month. If you don't mind that gap, you're gonna make everything else go the wrong way in your family life. And once you realize that, it might be time to adjust, because most of us, we want a high-paying job. When you get two jobs on a table, you're going to look at the one that gives you the most money. It's simple logic to a human being. But you have to mind that job that you are keeping. That, are you really enjoying that job? Is it facilitating your well-being overall? If it's not, you might actually get a lower-paying job that supports everything that is around you. And your mindset is critical.
I'm happy you touched on that, because one thing that I am very adamant about is getting people to do what their heart is telling them to do. Now, sometimes the thing your heart is telling you to do might be as simple as, I spoke with a niece of mine, and she said, all I like to do is play netball, and you can't do that for a living. I said, no, but you could be a coach. And when I showed her the dynamics of what drives you and what you can do with it, she was like, I never thought about that. Because we might think the thing we like to do won't pay us, but we have to look at it, spin it, and see how best, who can we get, who is there at that place that we can seek out, that we can find some mentorship, some coaching to get us to that level, to take what we have, so that at the end of the day, what we're doing is not only making us better, but it's keeping us paying. It doesn't really feel like work, but you're getting paid to do it. And I think that should be the end all and the be all of why we work. Is it just for money? Because at the end of the day, you're going to be burnt out and you can't even enjoy the money.
You know, I had a recent conversation about careers, and the conversation went like this: you can have a job that fills your bank account but empties your soul, or you can have a job that satisfies your bank account but your soul is rejoicing. My first job here on island versus what I'm doing now are very different roles. But I will tell you this: the sacrifice I made to get where I'm at now is far worth it, because my peace of mind is priceless.
Priceless, yeah.
It's priceless. And incidentally, on Friday, I ran into a former co-worker from the same place, and they had left. And he said, you know, it felt like 200 pounds being stepped off my shoulder. So what we have to figure out the gap between satisfaction and what we need to survive as far as monetary contribution. And if that gap gets too wide in either direction, it could cause a problem.
Yeah. And Greg talk about changing. So we have to remember that we have to do the gap analysis when we need to move, because he had to come to me. We had to discuss it.
Yep.
Because it was going to affect our bank account, right? So we had to come to agreement. Is your mental health worth more than our bank account? And it boiled down to yes. Because I couldn't deal with somebody who's coming home every day depleted, not satisfied. Then I have to deal with that. Wasn't worth it. Nope.
Yeah. It's that important, because once you help each other figuring out where's your gap, you'll be able to have that comfort. You will be able to have that. There's a big gap that can be affected by everything else, but that is the gap that we always need to keep very narrow. The gap between ourselves as a family and the man above. I don't know if we should call it a gap, because if you put your faith in that man and make sure that there is no gap in your spirituality and your constant communication with the big Father up there, no matter how wide all the other gaps are, it's so easy to close when you put your faith in the greatest man of all time.
Yes. We had a conversation recently, and it's along the same lines. It's like, do you realize how much less we would struggle with the challenges in life, with the gaps in life, if we just wholeheartedly give it over to him?
Trust him, right?
Trust him with all our problems.
With all our gaps.
Yes, with all our gaps.
Because
we're gonna worry, but if we put our faith and trust in the Lord to the point where there is a challenge coming up and we can say, you know what, the storm's facing us, but we're safe in the arms of the Lord, it is going to make such a difference, not only in how we get through it, but how our mental state is going to be in that process.
Yeah, a friend of mine put a status update with saying, I don't know if God has faith in me. And I replied to them and I say, I think you're having a problem with understanding your faith in God than God having faith in you, because you need to work on whether you have faith in God before you do anything, than for you to say, does God have faith in the decision that I'm trying to make? You make that decision with faith that the man up there is looking after you. There is no gap whatsoever between you and him. Once you know, you will never have any issues when you make your decisions.
Very true. Love it. That reminds me of a phrase that I came up with after listening to a Joel Osteen message. He said, fake it until you make it. And I look at Ingrid and I said, no. We're not going to fake it. What we're going to do is we're going to faith it. Faith until we make it.
Exactly.
But the other analogy, one last analogy, is that if we had faith in God, like we have in the chair that we sit in, our lives would be so much easier. How many times do we question the chair before we sit in it? We just go and we flop in the chair. That's faith, We're trusting that chair is going to hold us.
No matter how wide the gap gets.
Right. But it's a simple analogy to say, if we just, you know what, I'm going to give this to God and just plop it down. Boom.
Yeah, that's all you need.
So are we saying to be able to mind the gap, we have to develop our faith, our communication, and find balance in our lives?
That's a great summary, Michelle.
Michelle, say it again. Say it again. Because you hit the point.
Yeah, you close the gap on that one.
I am saying, are we agreeing that in order to mind all the gaps in our lives, we have to have faith, we have to communicate, and to find balance in our lives?
Yes.
Absolutely.
We are so in agreement.
Absolutely.
So in agreement.
To use the word we always is important.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Muhlangas, I want to thank you so much for making yourselves available.
Yes.
You have been a worthwhile, a valuable contributing factor to loading up the communication, loading up how to treat your top dog, loading up how to mind the gap, loading up everything we have discussed for the past 4 weeks. And
absolutely.
You are a gem, a rare gem. And we just want to say thank you so much for being available to just talk and be candid
and
about
speak from the heart.
Yes, speak from the heart about who you are and who you are. And ladies and gentlemen, I just want to thank you for working and for watching and for liking and for subscribing and for commenting for the past 4 weeks on the Top Dog series. We love you, and we just want to say thank you again. And I trust that this has helped your relationship. You're now able to communicate better with your top dogs, and you will just close the gap as we end the series. Thank you, Muhlangas.
Thank you,
Have
guys.
a wonderful evening.
Yes.
God bless you. Thank you.